Bruchim haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph, the very top. Our Gemara is discussing Pas Haba B'Kisnin. Until now we've been discussing regular bread, Pas, which of course has the designation of Hamoitzi and Birkas Hamazon. But this is Safek Pas. Pas Haba B'Kisnin is a discussion, what is it? Some Rishonim learn that it is the dough which is kneaded with the majority of things that are sweet, like fruit juice and sugar and other such things. Another definition is that it is regular dough, but it's filled up. It has a filling of things that are sweet, of chocolates and all types of sugars, just like a kokosh cake, these type of things. Another definition is things that are very flaky. It even includes pretzels and such. But the common denominator of all of these things, Pas Haba B'Kisnin, is that you don't normally eat a large amount of it. And therefore, the bracha is mezoinos and al hamichya. However, these things include many things like berekas, cakes, cookies, and all of these things. If a person does koveya suda on it, then it changes its bracha from mezonos to hamoitzi and from al hamichya to birkas hamazon. Says our Gemara, Rav Huna ochal tleisar rifti b'nei tlasa bekava v'lo barich. Rav Huna ate a very large amount of this Pas Haba B'Kisnin, and he didn't make a bracha of Birkas Hamazon afterwards. Omar le Rav Nachman, adi kafna, these that you ate it because you were hungry. Elo, even if you are only eating as a snack, but since it's a large amount that people will be koveya a suda on such Pas Haba B'Kisnin, you're obligated to make hamoitzi and birkas hamazon. Rav Yehuda have a osik le librei be Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva. Rav Yehuda made a erusin, he made a shidduch between his son and the house of Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva, meaning the daughter of Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva. Aisu lekamayhu Pas Haba B'Kisnin. They brought before them Pas Haba B'Kisnin. Ki osa sham'inu deka mevarche hamoitzi. When he heard that they were making the bracha of hamoitzi, Omar lahu, he said to them, "My tzitzi deka shamana." What is this tzitzi? Referring to the word hamoitzi. Tzitzi, he was hearing the word hamoitzi. What is this hamoitzi that I'm hearing? Dilma hamoitzi lecha mina oretz kemavarchisu. Maybe it's the bracha of hamoitzi that you're making a bracha on? Amulei, they said to him, in the Tanya, for it says in the Braisa, Rav Muna Omar Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Pas Haba B'Kisnin mevarchin alea hamoitzi v'omar shmu halacha k'Rabbi Muna. So indeed, we're making the bracha of Pas Haba B'Kisnin hamoitzi, just like it is ruled by Shmuel, and said in the name of Rav Muna. Omar lahu, he said to them, Ein halacha k'Rav Muna itmar. The halacha is not like him. Amrei le v'ho marhu the Omar mishmei de Shmuel. But didn't you yourself say in the name of Shmuel, Lachmanios ma'arvin bohen u'varchin aleihin hamoitzi, that Lachmanios, which is also a form of Pas Haba B'Kisnin, it's not the regular rolls that we're talking about, but these are rolls that are defined as Pas Haba B'Kisnin, either because they're very thin or because they are the types of rolls that are very sweet. Nonetheless, they're like wafers, and you use that for your Erev Tavshilin, and you made hamoitzi. So therefore, this is the same thing. It's also a form of Pas Haba B'Kisnin. It may not be the same thing as Lachmonios, but it has the same category, and therefore it should also require the bracha of hamoitzi. Says the Gemara, Shaini Hasam, that's different. The kava suudose ilayhu. That's because when it came to the eruv, they were koveya asuda, and therefore it gets the designation of hamoitzi. Aval hecha de lo kava suudose alayhu loy. But if you didn't make a suda on this, therefore it remains mezoinos and al hamichya. So again, Pas Haba B'Kisnin is something that a person doesn't normally eat a lot of, and therefore he makes the bracha of mezoinos and al hamichya. But a person is koveya a suda on it, then it changes its designation, like being a regular bread meal, and then he makes hamoitzi and he makes birkas hamazon. Rav Papa ikloy lebe Rav Huna bered Rav Nosen. Bosa de gamre suudosaihu. After they finished their suda, aisu lekamayu midi lemechal. After they finished their suda, he brought in front of them something else to eat. Shokol Rav Papa v'ka'achil. Rav Papa took it and he ate it as part of the continuation of his meal, even though he completed his own meal. Amr lei, they said to him, Loi sova lamar, gomar osir mle'echol. Do you not hold that once a person completed his meal, he already finished eating, that it's prohibited to eat again without making another bracha at least? That means that you finished your meal, you're done. Omar lahu solak itmar. He said to them, no, that's when the table was taken away. They used to eat on individual tables. And that's where the bread was, of course, and the rest of their meal was served on this little table. However, they would take away this table, and at that point, this is when it was served, this other food. So he said, this was if this was served then it would be considered to be after the meal. But however, he said, this wasn't done, and therefore I can go ahead and eat whatever was served to me. It wasn't solik. Rava v'Rabbi Zeira ikloy lebei Reish Galuso. Rav and Rabbi Zeir came to visit the Reish Galuso. Lebosar de saliku tocha mikamayu shadru luhu ristana. After they were finished their meal and their table, the individual tables were taken away from them, the Reish Galusa, who was apparently in a different room in the house, sent them another portion of food. Rava achil, Rabbi Zeir lo yachil. Rava continued to eat from the food that Reish Galusa sent, but Rabbi Zeir didn't. Omar le, Rabbi Zeir said to Rava, Lo sova lo mar, solak oser melechol. Don't you hold that when the table is removed, then you can no longer eat? Omar le, he said to him, Ana atoko de Reish Galusa samchinan. I am soimech on the table of the Reish Galusa. In other words, I'm just a guest. And therefore it's tolui, it's dependent on the Rosh Mesifta. In this case, he's the Rosh Mesifta, but not Rosh Mesifta, the Reish Galusa rather, who's the Balabayas. If the Balabayas continues to serve food, so therefore even if he has taken away even if the table was taken away from me, I can continue to eat. And therefore it's not considered to be a true slika. Only if I myself am eating my personal meal and I take away the table, then I can no longer eat. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav, excuse me, Harogil b'shemen, shemen ma'akvoi. He says if a person is used to taking oil and rubbing oil on his hands in order to then clean his hands from the meal and allowing him to have now a better odor, they should have good smelling oils that they would rub on their hands. If a person is used to doing that after the meal, then he says that's going to be considered to be the end of the meal. In other words, anything before that is not yet the end of the meal, even if he finished eating. This is the gemar. This is the ultimate finish of the meal when he rubs his hands with the shemen. Omar Ravashi ki avina be Rav Kahana. When he went to Rav Kahana's house, Omar Lon kigon anon de ragelino mishcha ma'akvalon. Since I, he said, in my home is accustomed to then taking oil and rubbing it in our hands after the meal, then that would be considered to be the end of our meal. As the Gemara says, "V'les hilchasa kekol hanishmaitza." The halacha is not like any of these opinions that say the meal is finished, not when it's the gemar, when they finished eating, and not when it is solik, when they take away the table, and not even when they then rub their oil on their hands, even if they're accustomed to doing so at the meal. Elo, what is the halacha? Kiha the Omar Rav Chia bar Ashi Omar Rav. Sholosh tekifos hein. There are three things that are tekifos that are done immediately one after the next. Tekef lesmicha shechita. Immediately after a person is soymech his hands, he puts all of his weight on the behemoth that's going to be brought as a korban. So then that, immediately after doing that, then needs to be the shechita of that behemoth. Tekaf leguula tefillah. We discussed this at length in the first parak, that after the bracha, after the Kriya Shema, let's say in Shacharis, that begins a bracha of Emes V'Yatzif, there's a long bracha that ends Baruch Atah Hashem Go'al Yisrael. And in that bracha we talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We say HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mitzrayim Ga'altonu, Mibeis Avodim P'tisonu. Kol B'choreim Horagta U'V'chorcho Go'alta. V'Yamsuf Bokata V'Zeidim Tibata. So then we speak about HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking it out of Mitzrayim and Yamsuf. Then we make the bracha Go'al Yisrael, and immediately, without any type of interruption, even without speaking, we shouldn't interrupt, by immediately then davening the Shmoneh Esrei and saying Hashem Svosai Tiftach. Tekef Nithis Yadayim Brocha. And in regards to our inyan, immediately after washing Mayim Achroinim, a person should then make Birkas HaMazon. This din of Tekef Nithis Yadayim is also found in regards to Mayim Rishonim. That means when a person, before he partakes in the meal and he washes his hand in Netilas Yadayim, also immediately, without making interruptions, he should go ahead and make Hamoitzi. And we also find this halacha in regards to Birkas Kohanim. When the Kohanim wash their hands, they should do so soon, right before then going up to the Duchan and not having too much time in between. Omar Abaye af anu ne'emar tekef l'tamidei chachamim bracha. He said we have an additional thing of another tekef. He says immediately from Talmidei Chacham that enter a home and are given hospitality, they bring bracha into the home, and that's immediate. Shneimar, it says, "Vayivarcheni Hashem beglalecha." Lavan turns to Yaakov Avinu and he says, "It is because of you that I had blessing in my home." Yibois Ema, the Gemara brings from somewhere else another source by Yosef HaTzadik. Mehocha, Shneimar says, "Vayivarech Hashem es beis HaMitzri biglal Yosef," that the house of the Mitzri became blessed as a result of Yosef HaTzadik. The Gemara brings a new Mishnah. Beirach al hayayin shelifnei hamozon. Poters hayayin shelachar hamozon. They used to then drink a cup of wine before their meal, and they would also, in addition, after their meal, continue to drink wine. And therefore it says over here, if a person made a bracha on yayin before the meal, that bracha will empoiter the yayin, the cup of wine that he has, even after the meal is finished. When I say after the meal is finished, I mean after they take away the bread and there's no more eating of the food they're having during the normal course of the meal, they have then a cup of wine afterwards. So that bracha on the wine that is made before the meal, on that first course, will then even go towards that cup of wine after the meal. He will not have to say a bracha when he then goes and partakes in that wine after the meal. The Mishnah continues, Beirach al ha-parperes shelifnei hamazon, poters ha-parperes shela'achar hamazon. They would also eat with an appetizer before even bringing a meal. Before they would wash on the bread, they would have this parperes, which would include different things, but they would eat this appetizer before the meal. And if a person made a bracha on this parperes, when they eat it before the meal, that parperes that they would eat as, so to speak, a dessert after the meal, so then this would also go towards that. They wouldn't have to make another bracha. Beirach ala pas poters ha parperes. If a person makes a bracha on bread and then he eats parperes, let's say in the course of the meal, so then that's going to poter the parperes. However, al ha-parperes loy poteres ha-pas. But if it's parperes that has, let's say, some sort of mizonos, and therefore he wants to then be moitzi also the pas with that bracha, he's not going to be able to poter the pas. Beis Shammai oimrim af loy maise kedera. Beis Shammai says even not on maise kedera, and the Gemara is going to discuss what part of the Mishnah is Beis Shammai referring to. The Mishnah concludes, Hayu yoshvim kol echad mivarech la'atzmoi. They say if they began sitting down, each one thereby will make a bracha on his own. In other words, to be moitzi somebody else with the bracha of food, you have to then have a kavivus together. So only if they're sitting together, that means that they plan to be together, not just happen to be sitting in the same place, but they came to then purposely be together, and therefore they consider as one group, can they be moitzi one and the other. So it says over here, Yoishvin kol echad, then mevarich la'atzmoi. If they're just sitting together, but not as a planned way, they just happen to be sitting in the same area, so then one cannot be moitzi the other one with the bracha. However, heisebu, if they are reclining, that already assumes that there's a kvius, that they're sitting together, and when they recline and eat together, then echa mevarich lekulan. Then one can then make a bracha for the rest. Oh, the Mishnah continues. Bolahem yayin b'toich hamozon. If wine is served in the middle of the meal, then kol echad ve'echad mevarich la'atzmoi. Then each one makes his own bracha, because since in order to be moitzi somebody else, you have to then have that person in mind to be moitzi, and the one who's listening has to hear all of the words of the bracha and also have in mind to be yotzei. And since he's preoccupied with eating, therefore each person makes his own bracha on the yayin. Achar hamozon, however, after the meal, echad mevarich lekulam. One will make a bracha on the yayin for everybody else. So here we're talking about when they finished eating, and that kos of yayin that they're going to then partake in afterwards, then one can be moitzi the rest of them. V'hu oimer ala mugmar, the same person who made the bracha to be moitzi others on the yayin, he will make a bracha what's called on the mugmar. They used to have a sort of form of incense that they would light after the meal in order to then bring a good smell, and they would make a bracha on that. So the one who would make the bracha on that would moitzi everybody else. That was the same person who made the bracha on the yayin. And here's a chiddush that even though the mugmar is not connected to the suda, it's even after they made birkas hamazon, still that one person will then be moitzi others, since he had the zechus and the kavod to make the bracha on the yayin, will continue giving him that kavod to make the bracha on the mugmar.